All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are diving headfirst into a wire-to-wire chronological recap of an absolutely thrilling 2025 Moto2 Argentina Grand Prix weekend. After falling off the calendar in 2024, Termas Stereo Hondo made a massive triumphant return, and honestly, the Moto2 grid absolutely delivered for those huge crowds. If you are into incredible machinery, razor-thin margins, and absolute masterclasses in tire management, well, you're definitely in the right place today. Let's get started. Here's a quick look at what we're covering today. First up, the Argentina GP qualifying results, then the race start, Dixon's dominance, the final race results, and finally, we'll wrap up with the current Moto2 championship standings.
All right, part 1, Argentina GP qualifying results, where Gonzalez sets the blistering pace.
So, to secure pole, Manuel Gonzalez threw down an absolute heater of a lap time, 1 minute 40.870 seconds on his Liqui-Moly Dynavol intact GP Calyx. Seriously, this was just a flying lap around that 4.8-kilometer circuit. It really proved Gonzalez carried all of his momentum from the season opener straight into Argentina. But as we always say in racing, pole position is really only half the battle, right?
What's really fascinating here is just the sheer tightness of the field. When you look at the top 5 on the grid, Gonzalez was obviously the man to beat, but man, Jake Dixon was breathing right down his neck on that Elf Mark VDS Bosca-Shiro. I mean, we're talking exactly 0.2 of a second behind. Then you've got Ramirez, Escrig on your forward chassis, and Morera, all of them less than 0.3 of a second off pole. It perfectly set the stage for what was bound to be a massive showdown on Sunday.
Moving on to part 2, the race start. The 21-lap sprint begins. The way this race developed was a total masterclass in control. We're looking at a 21-lap sprint, covering just over 100 kilometers in total. There were some great clouds hovering around, but the track stayed completely dry. The whole narrative of this race really boils down to 3 key phases: that explosive start, the super crucial mid-race tire management, and then finally riding it home for a dominant finish. Now, despite Gonzalez having that ultimate qualifying pace we just talked about, it was actually Jake Dixon who grabbed the whole shot. He took immediate control right from the opening lap. He completely nailed the launch, snatched up that prime real estate diving into turn 1, and honestly, he simply refused to look back. Getting clean air early in Moto2 is so incredibly vital, but what Dixon actually did with that clean air was truly something special. Which brings us to part 3, Dixon's dominance, an untouchable pace. Okay, I absolutely love this quote from a fan on the MotoGP subreddit who was watching the live timing, because it perfectly captures what literally everyone was thinking. They said, thought Dixon was going to burn the tires and drop back, but ran Lorenzo-esque all the way to the flag. For those of you who know your racing history, calling someone Lorenzo-esque is huge. It means being metronomic, perfectly smooth, hitting the exact same braking and acceleration markers lap after lap without making a single mistake. Fans were totally stunned. Everyone expected his crazy aggressive early pace to just destroy his rubber, but no, he was completely dialed in. So the big question is how he actually managed to pull this off. Well, the combination of the Bosco-Skirl chassis and just a brilliant team setup gave Dixon this unbelievable mechanical grip. Remember, in Moto2, everyone is running the exact same Triumph 765cc engines and the same one-make Pirelli tires. So finding that extra mechanical grip, that's the holy grail right there. It let Dixon push relentlessly without spinning up and cooking that rear tire. He looked so comfortable out there, it honestly seemed like he could have gone another 20 laps if he really needed to. To really put his dominance into perspective, just look at his winning margin. A massive 3.525 seconds. Now, in the insanely tight Moto2 class, where pole positions are literally decided by hundredths of a second, finishing 3.5 seconds ahead of the rest of the absolute best riders in the world, that is a true vanishing act. Unbelievable stuff. Let's look at part 4, final race results, the checkered flag at Termas de Rio Hondo. So here's how the top 5 shook out at the checkered flag. Dixon obviously takes the top step for the Elf Mark VDS racing team. Manuel Gonzalez, despite losing out at the start, managed to secure a really vital second place on his Calyx. But then just look at that massive gap to third. Celestino Vietti rounded out the podium on another Bosco-Skirl, but he was over 10 seconds back from the leader. Aaron Canet and Marcus Ramirez then followed closely behind Vietti in a really tight, scrappy battle for 4th and 5th. This result really tells us 2 huge things about the season going forward. First off, it brilliantly illustrates that Dixon was absolutely right to change teams this year.
He looks completely reinvigorated on that Elfmark VDS machine. And secondly, Gonzalez proved he's got the maturity of a champion. He realized pretty early on that he couldn't match Dixon's crazy pace without risking a crash, so he rode a super smart, calculating race to bank those crucial second-place points when a win just wasn't on the cards.
Finally, Part 5, Moto2 Championship Standings. The title fight heats up.
Thanks to that smart riding and his consistency across the first 2 rounds, Manuel Gonzalez is holding on to the championship lead with 45 points. But look who's right below him. Jake Dixon's dominant win has vaulted him straight up into second place with 34 points, which is incredibly close to Aaron Canet sitting there at 33 points. Marcos Ramirez, Senna Agius, and Celestino Vietti round out the top 6. We are only 2 races into the season, guys, but the cream is already starting to rise to the top.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we want to leave you with today. We've seen the Calyx machinery completely dominate Moto2 for years, but this Bosco Scuro chassis is seriously starting to show its teeth. So now that Jake Dixon has found this devastating Lorenzo-esque rhythm and flawless grip on his new machinery, can anyone in the Calyx camp find an answer before he just runs away with the championship at the next round? It is a fascinating technical and mental battle, and I absolutely cannot wait to see how it unfolds. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.